Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Adamoose, and today in this series called In Depth, I'm going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about Graves Jungle.
Like fish in a barrel.
Graves is a personal favorite of mine, who's dominated the jungle meta for years. He's a powerful farming jungler who has massive carry potential when piloted by an experienced player. If you enjoy the content, it really helps me out if you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm. If you want to talk with me and other members in the community, be sure to join the Discord link that's in the description. I hope you guys can learn something. Enjoy the video. Quickly before we hop into the content, I want to introduce the sponsor of today's video, League Unleashed. League Unleashed is a coaching service that helps players of any skill level quickly evolve their game to the next level and reach their goals. They have a roster of very high elo coaches to choose from, which will help you identify your mistakes, figure out where you're stuck, and greatly speed up your learning curve. They also offer a free coaching session to anyone who's serious about improving. Simply click the link in the description to go to their site, fill in your info, and schedule your first lesson. If you want to get a feel for their service, I highly recommend checking out their YouTube channel where they post educational content and coaching VODs as well. I've learned a lot about jungling from them, and I highly recommend you guys give them a go. If you do check them out and enjoy, be sure to tell them I sent you. It really helps to support my channel. Graves' passive is called New Destiny. Graves' basic attacks consume ammunition with 2 shells, and he'll reload over a few seconds after either using all bullets or while not using any for a while. The reload time is reduced by Graves' level and bonus attack speed. Innately, Graves' basic attacks spray 4 pellets in a cone, each colliding with the first enemy unit or structure in its path. This physical damage is also increased based on how many subsequent pellets hit the same target, and deals 25% reduced damage against structures. Critical strikes spray 6 pellets over a 25% wider cone, with each pellet dealing bonus damage. Additionally, minions and monsters hit by more than 1 pellet are knocked back, aiding in easily kiting jungle camp. This is one of the most unique passives in the game that really requires some practice to get used to. Graves' shotgun autos are extremely powerful, but can also miss or be blocked, so putting yourself at the right angle to maximize DPS will be the single most important thing to learn on Graves. Graves' Q is called End of the Line. Graves fires a round in the target direction that deals physical damage to all enemies it passes through and leaves behind a powder trail. After 2 seconds or upon colliding with terrain, the round detonates, dealing physical damage to all enemies within a wide area and in reverse wave along the powder trail. This is Graves' main DPS tool, which although seems simple at first, is actually very tricky to pull off correctly. Since the detonation has a pretty big delay, using this against walls or in choke points is crucial to ensure that you get the maximum damage off. You can also Q flash, catching enemies off guard and bursting them against terrain, which is very useful in those close call scenarios. Graves' W is called Smoke Screen. Graves fires a smoke canister at the target location, which deals magic damage and slows all enemies within the area. The canister then creates a cloud of smoke for 4 seconds that applies near sight, meaning enemies cannot see outside the smoke. This reduces enemies' sight radius every 0.25 seconds and makes it so that enemies caught inside will have no idea what is going on. Although this ability can seem useless at first since it has such a long cooldown, a well-placed W can really change a fight. Enemies inside your smoke screen cannot auto-attack anything outside and will not know how to land skill shots and most likely get hit by them as well. Graves' E is called Quick Draw. Graves dashes to the target location, resetting his basic attack timer and reloading 1 shell while gaining a stack of True Grit for 4 seconds, which stacks up to 8 times. Dashing towards an enemy champion will grant you 2 stacks instead. Quick Draw's cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds for every pellet impacting an enemy, allowing you to get multiple E's off in extended fights. For each stack of True Grit, Graves gains bonus armor. Subsequent casts of Quick Draw and attacks versus non-minions will also refresh its duration. It's important to keep your True Grit going while clearing your jungle, and within fights to ensure that you keep the big armor bonus that this passive provides. This dash can also be used as an auto attack reset, which you want to be using at pretty much every point in the game to increase your clear speed and DPS. Graves' ultimate is called collateral damage. Graves fires an explosive shell in the target direction, which deals physical damage to all enemies hit, while also recoiling backwards in the opposite direction. Upon hitting an enemy champion or reaching the end of its range, the shell explodes in a cone to deal 80% of its original damage to additional enemies. You can also R-flash, buffering the animation time to get into range and delete targets. Although this is not the most flashy ultimate in the game, the long range and massive damage can be used to burst enemies down, snipe low health targets far away, or even as a kiting tool in close range fights. For ability maxing, Graves maxes Q first, E second, and W third in all games. For skill order, E level 1, Q level 2, and either W level 3 to make early plays, or a second point into Q for the farming routes we'll discuss later on. Now let's jump right into Graves' best rune setups for Season 12. For Keystones, Fleet Footwork is by far the strongest and most consistent choice for Graves in the current meta. The sustain and movement speed fit his kit perfectly, since he could tank up extra damage and close the distance against mobile targets. To close out the precision tree, Triumph, Legend Alacrity for DPS, Legend Tenacity into heavy CC teams, Coup de Grace into squishies, or Last Stand into low burst, tanky teams. For secondaries, there are quite a few options. Most common among high elo Graves players is Inspiration with Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight. Sorcery with either Nimbus Cloak, Absolute Focus, or Gathering Storm is another strong option as well. Resolve with Conditioning and Revitalize is also a strong choice for extra tankiness, although not recommended over the other two in most games. If you're looking for a full burst build, Dark Harvest is another viable keystone option. Although not recommended over Fleet, it can still be very strong, especially in lower elos where you can get tons of stacks. For the Domination tree, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, and Relentless Hunter are the most standard runes. For secondary, you can either run Triumph and Legend Alacrity, or one that was mentioned earlier. For rune shards, Graves' usual setup is attack speed, adaptive force, and either armor or magic resist depending on your jungle matchup and enemy team comp. Now that we've got Graves' rune pages down, let's go over his best item builds. For starters, both Red and Blue Smite are viable options for Graves. Red Smite is the better dueling option, while Blue Smite provides some extra utility into squishy, highly mobile comps. For boots, Mercury Treads into heavy CC, Plated Steel Caps into AD auto attack based teams, and in cases where you don't need either, Berserker's Greaves can be a strong choice to increase your DPS. Now for Mythics, Eclipse is going to be your strongest, most consistent option by far. Since Crit Graves has been nerfed multiple times, Eclipse is all around the best choice for tons of damage and the addition of lifesteal and a shield for extra beefiness. Duskblade, Shieldbow, and Gore Drinker are all decent options as well, but since Eclipse shines above the rest, we'll focus on this build. When it comes to your core items, Black Cleaver for Armor Shred and CDR, Mauve Maw Mortius for a magic damage shield, Ghostblade for burst and movement speed, Death's Dance for armor, and the Collector when you're snowballing are going to be your main options. You can also run full crit, but keep in mind that it's nowhere near as strong as this setup for the current meta. To close out the item section, it's extremely important to remember that Graves has some solid item diversity, and his build should always be adjusted based on your current game state. Your goal is to build enough damage to duel and one-shot enemy carries, while also building some tank stats so you do not get instantly deleted before participating in fights. You can even pick up tank items such as Randuin's or Spirit Visage in the late game if your team is lacking frontline. Learning what to build for each game is a skill that comes with time, but will greatly increase your chances to win. Now let's jump right into Graves' general jungle strategy and pathing. First is learning how to clear effectively on Graves, which in my opinion is actually one of the hardest things about his kit. Your shotgun deals high single target DPS, but can also deal AoE damage. Learning at what points to auto straight at a single target, or to angle yourself so that your bullets hit multiple targets, is definitely an important skill to master. An example is if you're clearing Krugs and want to hit multiple small ones at a time, angling yourself slightly away from the target so your bullets spread out will allow you to kill multiple at once, saving tons of time. Next is using your E as an auto attack reset and kiting tool throughout the entire game. This is simple but crucial to make use of to increase efficiency and to stay healthy. On the topic of your E is trying to keep up your True Grit passive from camp to camp and before getting into fights. This might not seem like a big deal, but will make a huge difference if you end up getting into a scrap. This can be done by saving an E charge when you need to go from one side of the map to the other, refreshing your E's passive before it resets. Now where it gets a bit tricky is understanding Graves' jungle playstyle. Since he thrives at being aggressive and in the enemy's face, learning how to use his kit properly in fights will be crucial to your success. First is using your Q in choke points or into walls in the jungle to ensure that you get the full Q damage. This is even better when you're out of vision to surprise enemies with massive burst. Next is to play around lanes who have CC and gank setup, since Graves pairs amazingly with allies who can lock enemies down. Since you have no utility yourself, playing around lanes who do will make your job much easier and allow you to completely pop off. If you're looking to gank, having red buff will allow you to slow enemies and chase with ease. I also recommend holding W and your E for after the enemy uses their flash or mobility spells to increase the chances that your gank succeeds. It's also important to note that tower dives and fighting in minion waves is very difficult since your autos will get blocked. Positioning correctly is extremely important and will take some time to get used to. Now for actual jungle routes, Graves can pull off multiple paths depending on both team comps. The full clear route is the first option that is by far the safest, which I recommend for newer players. This usually involves starting red side, dashing over the wall to Krugs, and fully clearing towards your blue side while you'll farm both blue and Gromp at once. You'll also put a second point into Q at level 3, since you won't be fighting until level 4. This clear is pretty difficult to get down, so I highly recommend practicing it first to get a fast time. Next, and a personal favorite of mine, is the red into invade path, which is used to bully out weak junglers and to either kill them or to steal their camps. Graves is an extremely strong level 2, which can be very annoying to deal with if you pull it off correctly. Simply dash over the dragon or herald wall and pull up on your unsuspecting enemy. Knowing when to do this comes with experience, but is something I definitely need to mention if you want to master Graves. If you want a safer version of this, you can do the 3 camp, gank, or invade path. This consists of either clearing red-blue Gromp or clearing red Raptor's Gromp. After you hit level 3, you can then choose to gank a vulnerable laner, invade the enemy who's doing a full clear, or continue full clearing yourself back towards the other side of the map. Lastly would be the 4 or 5 camp clear into gank, which is a similar path, but involves clearing a couple more camps along the way. It's important to constantly examine the map state to know which path is best, since this will change from game to game. In general though, look for lots of invades, bully out weak enemy junglers, and play around your lane priority to push your lead and accelerate yourself into the mid and late game. Graves' biggest weakness is definitely that since he has no CC or much utility at all, he becomes extremely useless when he falls behind. This is especially true since he's very low range and can get instantly deleted in fights if he's down on levels and items. To build on this, Graves' low utility and range also makes him very weak against comps with lots of range and peel, making it difficult to get in range and deal damage. Champions like Janna, Ezreal, and Corki will give you a tough time since they can hit you from 2 screens away. In addition, Graves can struggle into junglers such as Rammus, Fiddlesticks, Udyr, and Trundle, since they can all tank up your damage and provide tons of utility, which is very hard to play around without lots of experience. It's also important to keep in mind that True Grit only provides you with armor, so fed AP champions will still delete you with ease. Last is that Graves is actually extremely difficult to pull off at the highest level, which makes new players think that he's a weak champion. He requires solid jungle fundamentals, an aggressive playstyle, smart positioning, and even good mechanics with his shotgun passive. In reality, learning Graves takes a lot of time and effort, which will pay off, but requires a ton of patience. And finally, let's discuss what makes Graves a staple pick in the jungle. First is that Graves is pretty much always a good pick, no matter what your team comp is. Yes, of course Graves does have some counters, but in reality those counters are very few and far between. This is why he's been on the top of the jungle meta for years, and I do not expect that to change anytime soon. Next is that Graves is a top tier solo queue jungle pick due to his massive carry potential and scaling. Although he does not provide as much utility as most other junglers, he makes up for that with sheer damage and ability to carry. Once Graves picks up some items, he easily shreds through his jungle camps and quickly becomes a monster threat in the mid and late game. To build on this, Graves is one of the best early dueling and invading champions in the game, which allows him to completely dumpster weak early game junglers if played correctly. This is why champions such as Viego, J4, Shaco, and Kayn are such favorable matchups. Graves can stack his grit and dodge their key abilities, leaving them almost no counterplay if the Graves player knows what they're doing. Graves has a healthy clear due to his shotgun pushback, tons of mobility with a short cooldown dash, strong 1v1s with his true grit, and even a flexible build path. This might make him seem like he's OP, but only players with true mastery can fully take advantage of these strengths. Graves is an extremely fun, high skill cap carry jungler that is always a solid pick to have in your champion pool. He deals massive damage, farms fast, is surprisingly tanky, and has great late game scaling. If you're looking for a unique carry jungler that is relevant in every meta, Graves is definitely the pick for you. That will do it for my Season 12 in-depth guide on Graves Jungle. If you want to support my content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with my weekly uploads. Most people who watch are not subbed, and your support really helps my channel grow. If you're looking to add more jungle champs to your pool, make sure to check out the rest of my in-depth series to find more guides just like this one. While you're at it, make sure to also check out League Unleashed website and YouTube channel. You definitely will not regret it. With all that being said, thanks again for watching. Until the next video, peace out.